Welcome everybody to the final briefings of the fall workshop for the Masters of Environmental Science and Policy program. This workshop represents 2 semesters of work. First, starting with focusing on the science of the environmental problem and proposed solution embedded in these statutes, and then moving on to the management simulation of how we would actually make these things happen. So this class has integrated a whole range of issues, from understanding environmental science to understanding politics to understanding management, and also communicating with each other. Not only did we focus on communication, we also focused on working together in groups. And so throughout the program, in the summer science curriculum, in sustainability management, in this workshop in particular, group work has been emphasized. And group work is a really important part of what we do, because in order to solve environmental problems, we have to bring many disciplines together. People with law backgrounds and environmental science backgrounds and ecology and politics and management and engineering, all working together as a team, which is what you've just done for 2 semesters. So if you think about the literally thousands of hours each group has spent, and now they're going to represent their work in a 10-minute briefing, which is probably the single most important professional skill you can learn in a program like this. Because if you get those 10 minutes, you really got to take advantage of it. So we're going to start with our first group, which is the group that I advised, working on energy security and independence. So if our briefer is here, come forward.
Good morning. My name is Katiana Wardana, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the Energy Security and Independence Act of 2022 workshop team today. I would like to say a special thank you to our advisor, Professor Cohen, my output team, Monty and Holly, our managers, Tal and Brett, and the rest of the team for their hard work this semester. For today's agenda, I will go through the environmental problem that the bill aims to address, provide a short overview of the bill, our proposed first-year program design, the performance management system to measure the success of the programs, key accomplishments. Lastly, I will complete the presentation with some key takeaways. Anthropogenic climate change, driven largely by our burning of fossil fuels for energy, is one of the most defining crises facing our world today. Climate change has wide-ranging implications on the Earth's natural ecosystems that are vital for human welfare and survival. In the western United States, the Earth's warming climate has made drought about 40% more severe, making it the region's driest stretch since 800 AD. This has led to water shortages and increased pressures on farmers. Acreage burned by wildfires more than doubled between 1990 and 2010. And as we move to the east, climate change also worsens the intensity of tropical storms that can lead to the dislocation of many vulnerable communities. Furthermore, climate change exacerbates existing socioeconomic inequities in the United States. Currently, low-income households spend roughly 8.1% of their income on energy expenses, which is 3 times the proportion spent by non-low-income households. Furthermore, 1 in 3 households remain unable to meet basic energy needs. And as annual electricity demand continues to grow in the backdrop of climate change, inequities will continue to widen, especially given the challenges that persist the country's energy system and supply chain. Currently, non-renewable energy still makes up a majority of the US energy system, while renewable energy makes up only 12%. In addition, the US renewable energy supply chain is still highly dependent on imports. 80% of solar photovoltaic are shipped from Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. And last year alone, the US also imported more than $4.6 billion worth of major wind turbine components from other countries. Therefore, action is needed to change the status quo. Introduced in the 117th Congress by Senator Bernie Sanders and other Senate Democrats, the Energy Security and Independence Act of 2022 has 3 main goals: to transform the US domestic energy system into 100% renewable energy, to strengthen the entire domestic renewable energy supply chain from components to entire systems, and to support environmental justice communities by reducing energy cost and creating union jobs in the renewable energy sector. Over the course of 10 years, the bill allocates a total fund of $150 billion. A majority of this funding is allocated to the development of a domestic renewable industrial base. $25 million is allocated to setting up a domestic renewable industrial base task force. Additional allocations are channeled to the Weatherization Assistance Program, federal heat pumps and community solar, and a state block grant program for renewable energy supply chain. And it's clear from the bill's focus and funding priorities, the bill has several concurrent goals. In order to do justice to its goals, we've created a strategy behind the program design, launching industry-focused programs that are more long-term and simultaneously prioritizing tasks that create community-focused impact in the medium term. Over the next few slides, we'll be going over a detailed program recommendation for each of these. First, let's talk about the industry-focused programs. In year one, $6 million will be spent towards putting together the Domestic Renewable Energy Industrial Base Task Force that functions to oversee the federal allocation of $100 billion and ensure that state-level block grants are used towards areas of the renewable energy supply chain that would lead to the largest public benefit, while supporting the renewable energy workforce transition and upholding principles of fairness and equity per the Justice 4D initiative. The new interagency task force will operate under the White House Office of Domestic Climate Policy and will comprise representatives from relevant federal agencies such as Secretaries of Energy, Transportation, and Labor, as well as experts from the fields of equitable energy, environmental justice, and labor unions. In order to successfully lay the groundwork for a strong industrial base in the United States, a team housed under the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chain will lead national labs and universities in conducting a study to identify opportunities to convert fossil fuel infrastructure to renewables, assess gaps in the current supply chain, and evaluate the needs for continued funding to further the bill's objectives. The study will culminate into a report to Congress by the Secretary of Energy. Next, to provide federal assistance to renewable energy-based projects proposed by different entities across the United States, a request for proposal process will need to be established. The process will be based on the recommendations of the task force and the Secretary of Energy report to Congress. It will be housed under the Loans Programs Office and staffed with 7 people to manage the grant process. In our identified program sector, we also created a state-level block grant program for renewable energy supply chain, for which an application process for state-level supply chain projects will be created, and this will be housed under the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains that will be in charge of screening and approving state-level block grant applications. Now we'll move into the community-focused programs. The federal government is one of the largest energy consumers in the country, managing over 300,000 buildings. Installing heat pumps in federal buildings and concurrently the development of community solar projects around environmental justice communities would potentially generate significant savings on annual energy bills. Yet, this is likely to be a monumental effort. So the first-year work scope involves the identification of relevant federal buildings, the prioritization of projects in environmental justice communities, and setting up the groundwork for beginning the actual installations. We allocate $2.8 billion to this effort in the first year, and the funds will be channeled through the General Services Administration and the task to be executed by a separate office of 250 people under the Federal Energy Management Program. The Weatherization and Intergovernmental Programs Office implements the Weatherization Assistance Program that reduces energy costs for low-income households by helping enable energy efficiency retrofits. We recommend no changes to the existing program and will add on $3 billion to expand the program's budget. Based on the recommendations of Domestic Industrial Base Task Force, a comprehensive workforce development program will be developed to ensure a fair and equitable labor transition to the renewable energy sector. This will include targeted vocational programs, STEM-designated mid-career programs, and the establishment of labor standards as well as just retirement benefits, especially for late-career fossil fuel workers. So in 2023, we have identified 5 key accomplishments: the launch of the Supply Chain Block Grant Application Portal, the launch of the Industrial Base Development RFP Application Portal, the Secretary of Energy report to Congress, beginning the installation of federal building heat pumps and community solar, and lastly, the year-end report on the full program to the President. Our first-year accomplishments are critical and will create the foundation for the next decade. But successfully executing a program as complex and comprehensive as the Energy Security and Independence Act requires a solid reporting framework to gauge progress on the bill's objectives. So a quarterly report is both produced by the Industrial Base Task Force and the Department of Energy to record and track progress of projects. While the task force provides its findings to the White House Office of Domestic Climate Policy, the Department of Energy relays project progress to the Secretary of Energy. Both reporting systems culminate into an annual report for the President overviewing the status of the program. In turn, feedback takes a top-down approach from the President, who creates directives to inspire implementing agents to make continuous improvements to the projects. So in conclusion, ensuring a climate-resilient future in the United States through a reliable domestic renewable energy supply chain requires strong public-private coordination over the next few decades. We believe our proposed community-focused and industry-focused programs will help achieve the bill's goal, that is to realize an equitable future by strengthening the foundations for sustained energy security and independence in the United States. On behalf of our team, we would like to say thank you. Okay, Christine.
Hi, Katiana. Thank you for the presentation. It was really informative. I was just wondering, you mentioned community solar projects. Could you talk more about how does it work and how would it benefit environmental justice communities?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Christine, for your question. So under a community solar program, usually local residents all share the output of a single large solar installation that generate usually enough energy to power enough or hundreds or thousands of homes. So community solar installations or farms are started or owned by utility companies, nonprofit, as well as special purpose entities. And they pump clean energy into the grid. And usually households can apply credits that they earn from subscribing to these energy projects, which can reduce their electricity bill.
Great presentation,
Thank you.
Katiana. Thank you. You talked a little bit about the feedback process for the bill's implementation. What will be sort of the ways to measure the success of the program, like the metrics you'll be using or other ways that the program, at least in the first year, your group examined success measurement?
Thanks, Haley, for your question. I think the first year program design is very much administrative in nature. Therefore, there won't be any solid metrics or quantitative metrics in order to measure those success. However, surely metrics will be formed for other projects in the future. However, perhaps it's about the communication between different agencies and coordinating the programs. Therefore, perhaps that's a metric that can be used. Thanks.
I have one more question. Thank you, Katiana, for the great presentation. You mentioned that in the first year, the goals and the 5 key implementations are going to be critical for the rest of the decade. Could you share a little bit from your perspective, what are some of the potential challenges in implementing these first year program design?
Thanks, Mel, for your question. So I think one of the biggest challenge for the first year program design would be installing the public heat pumps and the actual installation of the community solar farms, because as I've mentioned, it requires a lot of coordination between contractors and different agencies within the Department of Energy.
Thank you.